Let's continue with what we were doing last time. We were on to the Bij mantra. Is it visible?
Yes, it is visible.
So we were talking last time about two things, the mantra, the Bij mantra, and broadly the use of sound for purposes of self-healing and the purposes of self-development. So here last time we saw, if we look at this Tripura Sundari mantra, you see Om Aim Klim Sau Tripura Sundari Namo Namaha. This part, Tripura Sundari Namo Namaha, has meaning in known language. And that meaning is used to create certain changes when you keep repeating and understanding what you are repeating again and again. So the more you understand the mantra and the more you visualize and feel it fully, the more the effect would be. The active pharmaceutical ingredient that we were talking about last time, that way the core power of the whole thing comes from what is called the bij or the root. This is, in this mantra, it is Aim, Klim and Sau. Three bij mantras are used. Very interestingly, Klim is the bij mantra which is often used for fulfilling desire of some type. And Om is used for self-protection and multiplying the power of what follows. So it is like these sounds, Tripura Sundari Namo Namaha, they make an effect on the psyche because of its meaning and repetition and the visualization it would lead to. Aim, Klim and Saw make their impact only by virtue of the sound as it is, without any reference to meaning. And Om is a strange thing where it gives protection and multiplication of effect of Aim, Klim and Saw. Which means we are looking at three different types of sounds. Sounds with a known meaning in language, which has some impact on the inner world. Sounds which don't have any known meaning in language, and sounds which multiply the effect of other sounds. And this is a completely untouched area in Western psychotherapy, which has been in use for thousands of years in the East. Question then would be, which of these sounds would be useful to us, or do we have to generate new sounds which can be used to solve, let us say, the split open or the Oedipus or the problem of a good enough mother? So this is an area we are just opening up. It's just a baby step into it. It's not even half science. We are into an exploratory area. And if you look at Kali, it is this thing, and the core Bij mantra which is used in Kali is Krim. It is not Klim, it is Krim. And other bijas are also used. Krim. So three bijas essentially are in use: Krim, Hum, Krim. Om to protect and multiply. Swaha, it is a to give in an oblation. And Dakshina Kalika is one particular form of Kalika. Kalika is depicted in many forms, Kali. So one particular form is the Dakshin form. So it is Om to multiply the effect of the Bij mantras, Krim, Hum, Hrim. And they have the Krim, Hum and Hrim, they have effect on different chakras, especially the Muladhara chakra and the lower chakras. So these are what is the core active pharmaceutical ingredient. This is the multiplying catalyst. And this Lakshine, Kalika, Swaha, these three, they are by their meaning. But very interestingly, you could have put Dakshine Kalika after this, but has been deliberately put here. So why, I don't know, somebody expert in this area would know, in mantra science would know. Because in Sanskrit, even if you put the two words here, it would still have the same meaning. It is like in the statement, you can put some words.
The dhatu you're talking about needs to have a cleansed palate to go for the next repetition of that same thing, because then it is almost the same repetition. So in between comes the deity to which the energy is being channelized, and then you again redo it to close. It's like a in between process, an opening and a closing of same sounds.
Yeah.
Something like that.
So this placement is because of something to do with the spiritual process, nothing to do with Sanskrit language. Because in Sanskrit language, even if you put them in the end, the meaning is still the same. The grammar is different. Like if I say, I will go to Bombay, the statement is correct. But if I say, I Bombay go to will, the statement is wrong. It is wrong in English. If you say the same thing in Sanskrit, it is not wrong. In Sanskrit, both are correct. I will go to Bombay is correct. I Bombay will go to also is correct. The placement does not make a difference as it does in English. So from that point of view, even if you put this here or here, it makes no difference from a Sanskrit point of view. But from a mantric point of view, definitely it must be making some difference, and therefore it is here. But the core idea that I was trying to just spend so much time on was the entire use of this mantra science for self-healing and self-knowing, which we have not done as yet in psychoanalysis, or for that matter in the largely in Western psychotherapy.
So what is the life story of Kali? Like, is this the Kali we're talking about, the same Kali which had killed the Raktapija in the mythology, and she drinks the blood out of the body because the demon was accursed that as many as times the water, blood droplet would fall on the ground and another equals would be created. Just to, is that the same Kali we are talking about? What is the story, life story of this Kali, which we're referring here in this context?
Again, it depends upon the disciple and the guru, because there are not one but many life stories. One life story has to do with Mahishasur. Another life story has to do with Raktabij. But the core in all of it remains the same, that there is a very powerful evil person who cannot be defeated by anybody except a powerful woman. And Kali becomes that powerful woman to defeat that powerful evil. So, in a way, Kali destroys the omnipotent evil. Or let me say the second most omnipotent evil, and Kali herself becomes omnipotent. So we are dealing here with an omnipotent mother who can destroy, subjugate, overcome the narcissistically endowed second omnipotent evil part of the child himself. So when the split takes place inside the child and he sees himself alternately as all good and all bad, the all bad of the child is tamed only by the all bad mother. But she's not the all bad mother, she's actually the all good mother, but in fierceness appears more fierce than the all bad part of the child. So the Rakta Bija then, or the Mahishasur then, is the fantasy in the child's mind of the evil part of himself. and he is tamed by this omnipotent mother who appears more fierce if need be than the Rakta Bija inside the unconscious of the child. And the Rakta Bija is very important because from every drop of blood, another demon is born, which means from every undesirable advance of the child which is thwarted by the mother, another advance is born.
Oh, yeah.
So when we translate that myth into psychoanalytic terms, it is becomes a contest between the omnipotent reality defined part of the child and the omnipotent mother. And in the unconscious of the child, these terrifying fantasies are there related to self and related to the mother.
Mother.
And it is because of these terrifying fantasies that the terrifying self of the child gets tamed.
What you're sharing is from the Kleinian point of view, which is very much evident here symbolically, conceptually. What about the Freudian in terms of life force and death force? Because when we see these pictures, there's a lot of death and rage and a lot of black and dark energies which are associated with it. It appears more like a victory of Eros, the life force taking the shape or the version of the death force to protect the life force and all the corresponding psychological emotions involved there. How would you explain that if applicable?
Yeah. If we look at the thus Mahavidya from Freud's life force and death force model, as we move from Kali to Tripura Sundari, the proportion of the two shifts. In Kali, it is predominantly the death drive,
Right.
less of the life drive. In Tripura Sundari, it's more of the life drive, less of the death drive. But interestingly, the energy levels are high across because all are intense Mahavidyas. And what we see here is that the relationship with a mother figure with more of the life drive is very easy. It's very easy to relate to Tripura Sundari. But it's not easy to relate to Kali. And most people from the West find it extremely difficult, almost impossible to relate to Kali as a goddess. At best, they can come to Shiva, but to come to Kali is very difficult. Now, this is where the East differs from the West in a very fundamental way. How do you channelize your libido, your life drive, towards an object full of thanatos, appearing to be full of thanatos? How do you consciously channelize eros towards thanatos? And that, I think, talks about more of a cultural training in a depressive position, even in most extreme situations. That how do you channelize the feelings of love, respect, and reverence towards a figure which seems to be loaded heavily with death drive, which is a Kali worship which is not found in the West. The West is a very clear binary.
True.
You don't have this difficult ambivalences to negotiate in the Western culture. And therefore, the training is different. The cultural training is very different. But you are right. We are moving here from first engaging with the death drive with eros rather than only with fear. So we may start with fear, we may slowly get to eros, and then the whole idea is to transform our response to the death drive, the aggression which comes to us from outside, and be composed about it and slowly transform it into love. So the idea ultimate would be to see beauty and to see love and reverence and companionship and in Kali. It is to say,
And
transform the most unlovable object into a lovable object.
and if we bring another person from School of Psychoanalysis, Carl Jung, how is there any concept which can apply in terms of anima and animus to this particular version, the archetypes, or in fact the generalized term used like shadow work? Can it be the shadow form of one's own all benevolent, omnipotent self, starting from there and doing the shadow work and moving ahead, or anima, animus, or archetypes?
So here we see there is a strange mixture of the mother archetype with the predator archetype and with the warrior archetype, right? And the
The savior as well.
severe as well, and the evocation of the feminine part of oneself. It's a very strange evocation. The only other theoretical area that we find this is in some Kleinian work of some Kleinians, I should say, not Kleinian, but work of some Kleinians, where they talk about the early life fantasy of the mother and father being one. It's a strange kind of hermaphrodite omnipotent visualization, which is can be equally omnipotent on both the sides.
Yes.
So we see that kind of part here, and what we see here from a Jungian standpoint is we see a devouring mother, and we fear it activates our predator archetype that maybe the devouring mother will devour us also. But we realize later that the predator archetype was activated by mistake. Actually, it should have been the child archetype and the student archetype, which should have been activated, because the terrifying mother actually is a protector and the giver, not actually a predator. She is a predator for the evil.
Evil.
You, it's a protector.
It's a savior, protector. And how do we explain the murderous, torturous rage towards parents here?
It is projected out.
So
One,
that is cohesion, right, sir?
yeah, it's more of a ISTDP thing, the murderous and torturous rage. But it brings us to a very interesting point. One way to explain it is very simple from a ISTDP or a classical psychoanalytic standpoint, that this is a projection of your aggression. So what Kali is doing is something that you wish to do. So the murderous and the torturous rage, the desire to cut heads and create skulls and drink blood, these are your own sadistic, aggressive, torturous desires. Because you find it difficult to hold inside of you, you project it out and you create
Out.
myth out of it. So the myth actually is the story of your unconscious. So this is how is one way to look at it. And the question therefore is, towards whom all this pent-up aggression is? And can you allow it to go where it belongs to, feel it fully and let it go? That would be the resolution from a classical psychoanalytic standpoint. Now, this also brings us to a very important point from a mystical and spiritual standpoint. One way to look at the Buddhist tantric thing is to see that in the ultimate analysis, everything that you visualize and feel is coming from inside. I mean, I don't mean something which is in front of you physically, but
Yes.
in terms of the visualization process. So essentially, when everything is cleaned up, there is nothing more left to project, and you would not then see any Mahavidya. You would be in the state of Shiva. Another way to look at it is that it is not only projection from inside, but as you go through your journey of life, between you and the supreme reality, between the two of you and the laws of nature, something is created or something already exists, which is not only your projection but has an independent existence. Like Kali then would be seen not only as your projection but something independently exists, regardless of whether you access or you don't access. And there are two ways of looking then at Kali. That Kali is one of the mystical primordial entities existing regardless of the human race. And second way to look at it is that because of what the human race or certain individuals in the human race have done and the supreme power, in the interaction between the two, because of some process, an entity called Kali has come into existence. There are three different ways, therefore, to look at it. Right? The Buddhist way and the classical psychoanalytic way of projection, the independent Platonic way of saying that all these entities exist regardless of the human race and regardless of our psychological process. And third is that it is because of some human psychological process and the supreme power, because of the interaction of these two, something has got created, and that something depends on also human interest. Like if people stop thinking on those lines, that entity becomes more and more powerless. It would be like many of the Vedic gods are no longer prayed to. And therefore, from that standpoint, those gods would not be as powerful as they used to be before. So these are three different fundamental ways of thinking about all mystical entities, including the 10 Mahavidyas.
So will that be something like in one of our episodes we had talked about the gods and demigods, and we had also talked about the suprahumans, right? And energies. So if at all we remove the human species from the planet, how according to your understanding the existence of Kali would be placed? Will it be some entity in itself or some form of energy which we are trying to identify, project, or internalize and then project outwards?
The most common belief is that we are talking about a realm where entities exist, and these are very powerful entities. Just as different species exist on Earth, different species exist across different zones of reality, and therefore these entities exist independent of us, and they have their characteristics, and this is a part of the universal design. And these entities are very powerful, and in fact many of them actually are governing some of the forces which we call fundamental. So these are like the gods of elementals.
Right.
So when we look at that realm, in that realm some entities will be the gods of elementals, either elemental building blocks or elemental forces, and some will be more operational entities. Like they may not control any of the Panch Mahabhuta, but they would be acting out in certain situations. So these are more like operational, powerful deities. So these are the two ways of looking at it if we think that they are independent of us.
So how is Kali then depicted for the Mahavidya process?
So
when we say Mahavidya, we are talking about some knowledge, some wisdom. Now, if it is just the undoing and resolution of inner psychological phenomena, or is it something beyond that as well?
yeah, it's a good question. It's both. One of the differences between a normal psychotherapy process and the Mahavidya is the Mahavidya addresses both the inner and the outer. So it is not only resolution of psychopathology, it's also self-development, development of faculties, growth of some mystical powers, and results in the outside world. So it is not only work in the inner world, it's also work in the outer world. So this is how the Mahavidya effect would be, that it is at the same time of the inner world and of the out. It's a more integral approach to the change that we wish to introduce, not only inside us, but also around us. This would be the
Right.
core difference.
Just a question prior.
So
Yes, sir.
the depiction, that the question was of about depiction.
Ji.
The depiction is of wearing a garland of skulls, carrying a scissor, carrying that tool to cut grass. I don't know the name of it. And almost a kind of a sword, and one hand in benediction, and standing on top of Shiva.
So your voice has again fainted. Is it clear on your side?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly.
Okay.
So the depiction is drinking blood, wearing the skulls, standing on top of Shiva, right, and having killed many demons. So this is the, and obviously we are referring here largely to the demons of the inner world and outer world also, but largely to demons of the inner world of the Mulada. And the demons there, from psychoanalytic standpoint, are the two fundamental fears related to survival and attack. And also related to the demon of inability to control one's aggression. So these are the difficulties that we see depicted, and what happens to us in that depiction is very important. That when you see the depiction and the story behind it, when you hear of it, what happens to you? So when we see that depiction, it instantly creates or activates inside of us difficulties related to the bad mother. It activates castration anxieties. It activates death anxiety. It activates pain anxiety. It activates that severe ambivalence of how to relate to a powerful, benign mother who is so savage and difficult. So all the problems related to of the Kleinian type, even of the Freudian type, because this is like you are drawn to the omnipotence and the seduction of a savage mother. And the irony would be the mother herself is castrating, you don't even need the father. So it's a seduction.
Full omnipotence.
Yeah, it's a very ambivalent, it's ambivalence at its height. It's a very ambivalent seduction of a torturous mother, appearing torturous mother. I would say it's an intense ambivalent seduction of a fierce mother. That would be the right way to put it. Which we believe is devouring, but actually is not devouring.
What if it is teaching about to general people who are not from studying from the psychoanalytic point of view, for a layman, to, just as you said, to accept the difficult parts of omnipotence, because it has everything in it. So acceptance, and then merging it to the reintegrating it to one's personality, and then reaching to Tripura Sundari.
Yeah.
So can it be working with your own shadow, reintegrating, because you're projecting it outwards, So there is a choice and a power drive involved in this entire integration and reintegration till you form the take the highest form of Tripura Sundari.
Take 2 points here. What we are doing here is something more than Rosha. In Rosha, you only show certain things so that it activates something inside and that projects out. You give the story in that projection. Here, the story is already given.
Given.
Right? And you don't have science. You have a full picture. So you have a full picture and full story. It is kind of a different type of a projection approach where what is put before you activates the most difficult parts of you. And the projection happens. So what is presented to you is terrifying. It is made more terrifying by your own projections. And over a period of time, as the first impact wears away and the projection wears away, you see that the form is savage, but the deeds are noble. It is yeah, please go on.
Another aspect of depiction, not to offend anyone, but most of the goddesses, their bodies are covered. So here, this is very Oedipal in nature to have a naked body of mother, and the breasts are also uncovered, and the only thing she covers up herself is with the thanatos, the dead hanging arms and the skulls.
So it is a very explicit and dramatic and roaring depiction of libido and thanatos. And I think if one was to successfully do this, the bottom two chakras will by and large be in a very healthy state. And the deepest of complexes would go away, should go away.
Should go.
Logically speaking, if this approach was successfully done. And there is also an important element into it. When you do the process of it, which we have not gone into because I'm not an expert on it, I don't even know about it, but there is a lot of discussion about what comes up, and that is called in Hindi they say avran hatana, meaning you remove the layers, the covering layers one after the other. Of course they appear to be external, but they are actually internal projections. So you remove layer after layer of yourself in discussion with the group. As it proceeds, right, internal things happen, fantasies happen, experiences happen, sensations happen, lifestyle changes happen, thoughts happen, and this is called removing layer after layer and going deeper and deeper in purification. So that also is a very important aspect of discussion with the guru of thoughts, feelings, emotions, actions, dreams, fantasies. So there is a psychotherapy process built in this thing, apart from the mystical aspects of visualization and mantra.
Very interesting from a psychoanalytic point of view. We discussed few points prior this question also with regard to psychoanalysis. How do we have the depiction of this form of Kali? One is, my question is still the same because I would like you to answer it in the way from different schools of psychoanalysis, how this depiction has individual meanings.
From a Freudian standpoint, we are looking at being comfortable with Thanatos and fusing Eros into Thanatos to convert Thanatos into Eros, moving from Kali to Tripura Sundari. From Kleinian point of view, we are looking at developing capacity to withstand the fury of the omnipotent difficult mother, and over a period of time integrate the difficult mother with her good part, because as you spend more time you realize the mother looks fierce but actually is noble, and that allows you to integrate the good and the bad part and create a real mother and get into a depressive position. I prefer to call it an integrative position rather than a depressive position. And from ISTDP standpoint, it is to overcome the deepest of repressed, murderous, and torturous elements inside of us, which are getting projected out when this is presented to us. And from a cohesion point of view, it is to develop that sense of that intensity of cohesiveness, the health of the self, which does not disintegrate in the face of such a savage and omnipotent mother. So this is how we can look at it in terms of what we can gain from it. There are a lot of things to gain from it. One is the whole use of visualization, mantra, and relating. Because in the relation thing, because you are presented with a form and the form has an origin and a story, you start relating to it as though you are relating to a person. And then in that relating, there are stages of what is called samipya, tadrupta, tanmayata, and lay. And lay is a state where the identification is total and there is a union of parts of the other into oneself, and we undergo a complete change whereby the other is no longer externally needed, it's now a part of us. So the good parts of what we are identifying with, that becomes a part of us. Psychoanalysis is based on this whole assumption of reflecting, not acting. Tantra is based upon living beyond reflecting. So you actually live out the whole thing and you don't fear that you are almost creating a voluntary micropsychosis. You think of it as a purposeful experience for self-development and self-knowing. And with the guide of Guru and the whole tradition, you go across. So I think we are in an area where we can enrich psychoanalysis, learning a lot from thus Mahavidyas and what it does to inside of us.
If at all we have to put in the concept of defenses, which is very much prevalent in understanding the pathology or the psyche in terms of schools of psychoanalysis, where do these defenses come? Are they into the depiction? Are they into the interpretation individually? Where do you see them placing?
Initially, the psychotic defenses will be in operation. It will be more of split reaction formation, denial, and so on. In some cases, projective identification also into the group. Slowly and gradually, the more mature defenses will come in. As you be with it, you also will see that what we call gradual desensitization also is a process which is going on. That when you are with that picture 24/7 for 3 years, the gradual desensitization also happens. When you hear about the